Hi and welcome back to the Gemhawks YouTube channel. Thank you so much for coming back to see what we've been up to. Today I would like to start on a two-part demonstration. I'm going to show you first of all a really useful technique and the first part of a pendant design, and in the next video I'll show you how to finish off that particular pendant design and how you can kind of take that further and use it in other situations. So I'm going to show you the design first of all, which is a lovely little pendant. This is using a cabochon with a carved Ra eye or Horus eye on the front there, and this is an orangey yellow aventurine from my lovely friends in Mumbai. I'm using today 3 different colours and 3 different gauges of copper core wire. Now in the 1mm gauge I have chosen to use an antique bronze colour copper core wire. The 0.8mm gauge is a beautiful warm rose gold coated copper core wire, and then the 0.4mm gauge is in a sort of a lovely soft golden colour copper core wire. So you can use really any colours that you like, but I thought if I chose today to show you in 3 different colours that you'd be able to see how it all sort of forms together a little bit more easily. So the first thing that I want to show you is how to create a basic frame around our cabochon. So this is the 1mm gauge in antique bronze, and I will just give that a quick warm through thumb and forefinger just to heat that up and make it a little bit more fluid and pliable. Now I'm working here with a good 18 to 20 inches of wire, which is far more than you will need. Now this particular design is really helpful for gemstones that aren't a beautiful, smooth, irregular shape. You can use this on quite irregular shaped cabochons or slabs. So the first thing I'm going to do is pop it down on a soft board and just draw the wire all the way around. I'm choosing to work in a landscape orientation, but it will work with pretty much any shape, any orientation, even quite irregularly sized and shaped pieces. So I'm going to get that to circle all the way around to begin with, and then I'm going to remove the cabochon from position and just draw those 2 wires over the top so that we know that that shape is really quite a good facsimile of the overall cabochon or whatever piece you're choosing to work with. So I'm just going to open that out slightly, and then using any flat facing pair of pliers, today I'm using my bent chain nose pliers, I'm going to put a right angle bend just to the right hand side on of the 12 o'clock. So it's just to the right of the centre, and if I flip the whole section over, I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. So what I would then do is just pop that piece into position and make sure that those 2 segments almost meet in the middle. It doesn't matter if there's a gap, it can be really quite attractive. If there's a gap in the centre, you'll see that you can build up quite a nice little neck to your cabochon pendant design if you have that gap in the centre. And I've just woven this with a back and forth weave or a basket weave in the centre there. If you choose to bring them much more close together, then it is still pretty and strong, but it's just a slightly different look. So I'm going to again remove the cabochon from view and just work with these wires until I'm happy that the frame is completely to the shape that I want. I'm then just going to warm the wires up there on the neck part of the design and just get them out of the way. So I've warmed that through, so I know that I can just coil that around, and it then just makes it slightly easier for me to work with whilst we're doing the rest of the design. So that is an easy way to form a frame for any cabochon in many different ways that you would wire wrap a cab or a slab of gemstone or an irregular flat rock. You can use that form of creating a frame around a cabochon really easily for many designs. In fact, most of my designs start out quite similarly. So for the next section, I'm going to show you the technique utilising the 0.8mm gauge wire. Now you can achieve this with your round nose pliers if you are indeed very careful and you use the deepest or widest part of the round form. However, it is quite useful to get hold of some of these are stepped bale makers, but you can get bale makers which are exactly the same on both sides, or one is for instance a 6mm and the other is an 8mm. They're quite handy to have and really useful for designs such as this. So I'm going to show you again. This is the 0.8mm gauge wire, and I'm just warming that through between thumb and forefinger and utilising from one end. Now this is quite a short length of wire. To create the piece that we're wanting to use for the design I'm working on the board today, you would probably want to use again about 18 inches or so of your 0.8mm gauge, and what we will do is we'll coil them as we go, and you would only really need to go as far as your design requires, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So this is the cabochon we're working on, and this is the size of frame we've created. We need to create enough loops to go all the way around. Doesn't matter if there's a gap at the top again, but we're looking to at least get from 1 o'clock on this side to 11 o'clock on this side. So what you can do is leave your 0.8mm gauge on the spool if you prefer, or you can cut a length which you can estimate, I would say sort of 18 inches or so will be plenty. So what we're going to do is start at the very end of the wire and just draw that around. I'm working on an oversized bale maker right now, just for the purposes of demonstration. So I'm going to draw that all the way around until I have a complete circle. I'm just going to press that slightly down so that it sits neatly and seamlessly. So the next thing I want to do is to create another loop. Now when I'm creating this kind of form, it's really useful for so many designs, especially for pendants. But what I will do is I will roll the wire like so, draw the tail over the top, bring it all the way around underneath like so, and what we're looking to do is to create a straight line along the bottom. So if you do go a little bit too far, you can pop the frame back in, just wind that back down like so. Cooking with turmeric today, hence the yellow fingers, haven't been painting the house. So again, take the bale makers all the way around and draw the tail of the wire over the top. And I'm just going to twist the form because it's easier for me to do that because of the way that the camera is focusing. Like so, and we're just going to continue along until you have enough to follow that circuit all the way around the frame. Once you've got all of these little bubbles, I'll do another couple and show you then how we can bend it. And you do get into a bit of rhythm and it becomes easier and more fluid. These can be slightly further apart than I've created. There does need to be at least a small gap between each of the little circles that we're creating, but you can have a slightly larger one if you want. The key here is to get repetition of design, always to take that tail of wire over the top as you create, and in this way you get a really repeated fluid motion going on. Once you have enough of these little bubbles or these little circles, you can start very carefully forming that into a shape which will circle around your cabochon or the slab, whatever it is that you're working with. So I'm just going to show you one that I've created that fits this cabochon, like so. As I say, if there's a gap at the top, it is not important at all. And I'm just going to show you how that is going to fit onto the frame. So I'll pop that down for a second. So for the second part of this video's demonstration, I will now show you how to bring those two pieces together. And this is where we bring in the 0.4mm gauge wire. In this case, I'm using a soft golden colour. Now I'm looking here at probably around about 2 feet, 24 inches or 60 centimetres of your 0.4mm gauge wire. And what I'm going to do is bring you back down to the board. And I'm probably about halfway along the length of wire that I'm choosing to use. And just for the sake of ease, I'm going to take that to the 6 o'clock position on the frame. Now I want the segment that we've created little circles on to sit outside, but next to the antique bronze, which is the 1mm frame. And I'm going to lay my fine wire over the top of both of those wires, so my 1mm gauge in the middle and the 0.8mm gauge with the circles going around the outside. I'm going to take that down the centre, down here, and all the way around, so that I'm circling the frame wire and the circle section all the way together. And I'm just going to repeat that down the centre, and all the while I'm putting pressure to keep the frame and that circled section on the same parallel. And we're going to go again and again until we have completely wrapped those two pieces together and they become one form. All the way around, one, there we go, keep going, all the way down the centre between each of those circles. Now when you get to the last one, for security's sake, I'm going to take the tail of the wire and pop it up in the centre of the last bubble or the last circle that we made on that section. I'm going to pull that very firmly into position, and then I'm going to go back down the centre, so back down here again, and then I'm going to continue to wrap around this shoulder. So you can pull that out of the way if it's getting on your nerves. What I'm going to do is just go for 3, and for the sake of time I would just continue wrapping until I got to the shoulder here, completely filled that with like a gizmo type effect, and then I would trim off the excess. I'm then going to flip the whole thing over, and by this time you're probably quite used to the technique, which is just taking the wire around. And what we're doing again is we're putting a little bit of pressure to keep the frame next to the bubbles that we have put around the outside. So 1mm for the antique bronze, and this lovely rose gold colour is 0.8mm that we just formed utilising the bail makers, which in this case had multi-step and they had some vinyl coating on the end. So when we get to that last circle again, I'm going to take the very tail of my 0.4mm gauge, pop it up through the centre of that very final circle, and then draw that around. And we'll just continue to gizmo until we get all the way to the end. So I'm just going to again just go for 3, 1, 2 and 3, and draw that back up. I'm just going to pop that onto the board if the board doesn't get too feisty. Pop the cabochon into position and just let that sit for a second, and you can see where the next evolution is going to go with these designs. So that is the first step of a 2-parter, maybe 3-parter. Let's see how long it takes us to get through the next stage. So what we've done so far is we've created a frame for a cabochon, in this case an oval, and we've added some loops around the outside. Now the reason I wanted to break this down into a single video at this point is because there are so many things you can do at this stage that are different. So what I plan on doing is next week I'm going to record a stage 2 video. I'm going to show you how to complete this piece, but I'm also going to show you some alternative variations of what else you can do with this frame. So I hope that you've enjoyed today, and that will give you an opportunity to practice getting those loops into position and making sure they sit nicely on the frame. And then we can play a little bit more next week. Thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate your company and your support, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.